Okay, so what we're going to do in this lecture, I'm going to show you how to use Pandas, and I'm recording. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to use Pandas to analyze data. All right. So we have an Excel sheet. This Excel sheet has Excel file. This Excel file has two sheets. One is the course ICT 201 and a course CIS 2303. We're going to use Jupyter Notebook to do that. So if you go to Azure, and let's log in. Azure Notebook. We've done that last time. What we did, we learned how to just do like programming. But today we're going to use Pandas. So if we go to your project, the one that we created last time, and it was called First Project. Project 1. Do you remember it?
Yes.
All right. In Project 1, we had created a program, but this program just runs regular Python. What we're going to do, we want to upload the file that we want to analyze. And to do this, you can just click on the arrow here from computer, choose the file, and the file is on the desktop. Here it is, grades.xls. And then you upload it. Done. So what happens now, we uploaded the file into the project, the Azure project. The next step is that we need to create a notebook to analyze this data. So to create a notebook, you click on the plus, and then you type in the name of the program. Let's call it Program 3. And then select Python 3.6 and click on New. Now, we have the program, we have the data, and then we need to read this data and do some analysis on it. So click on the Program 3, the Python Program 3, the notebook. All right. So when you have data, there are a few steps that you need to do. The first part, because we're using a new library called Pandas, we need to import Pandas. So I'm gonna write some headings. So headings, and I click on OK. This program or this notebook shows you how to use Pandas. And click on Run. So this is the title. You can add more. You can do Markdown to write a paragraph. Typically, the first thing we need to do, the first step, is to do what? Is to import Pandas library. Notice this one is what? This cell is code. That means I'm going to run it. In code, you can write comments in Python. So I'm assuming that I'm not going to cover the basics of Python because you already know it. So how do we import Pandas library? I'm going to say import Pandas as PD, or could call it anything you want. This is an important step. If you don't do this step, nothing else after that works. So we want to make sure that this one runs and there's no problem. Typically, the problem that we'll get may be spelling. So when we run it, notice that the cell here, the cell in between the brackets, it's blank. That means I have not run it yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run it. And notice it's a star, until the server finish including the library into your process, into your notebook. So now I got a number. A number means it was successful. There's no error. Well, at least there's no errors, right? So that's the first step that we usually do. What would be the second step? The second step is to do what? Is to read the data. Reading the data comes from either a website, a link, or a file that you upload. Now we uploaded the file, and then the name of that file is given to us. We know the name of the file. The name is important. If I look at my project, this is the name of the file, grades.xlx, right? So we go back. We want to read this file. How do we read this file? To read the file, we use a command. I'm going to call this data1 equal PD, the library, that Pandas library that we included, dot read underscore Excel. Why Excel? Because the file that I have is an Excel file. You can read an HTML file. You can read a comma delimited file. But because it is an Excel file, so we have to use the command to read the Excel file. This command requires two parameters. One parameter is a must. The rest are optional. What is the parameter? Name is the file name. And the file name, just to be on the safe side, make it case sensitive. So it is called grades.xlsx. And if you want to make sure, you can rename it and copy the name from here. So I can do rename, and then I can select it. Sorry, here it is again. Control Command Copy. Notice when you click on the file, you can't read Excel files in Pandas, Jupyter. It's actually, you see, it's a garbage, but it's the Excel file. So to look at the data, you have to open the Excel file itself. All right. So I'm going to go back. Go back to our program. Here's my program. So the name, again, just to make sure I copied it, I'm going to paste it in here. The same thing. That's the first part. The second part that you can pass is the sheet name. Remember when we were looking at the file, there were sheets. Do you see that? There is ICT 2013 and there is CIS 2303. Again, to make sure that I got the right sheet name, I can double click here on it and then command copy it. And then I go back here. And then I put sheet underscore name equal the sheet name that I have just copied. So this would be my command. So what does this command do? It reads this file, the sheet in this file, because it's an Excel file, and store the data that we read in this object called data1. What is this data1? This one is a data frame. I'll explain to you what data frame is. So I'm going to write a comment here. Data 1 is a data frame that contains the data read. Okay. Let's test it and see what happens. If I run it, there is no error. How do I know? There's no messages afterward. If there are errors, what are the possibilities? Most likely, this command is, if you spell it correct, is fine. Most likely, it's the name of the file is wrong. That means that you didn't type it right, or you did not upload it to your project, or the sheet name is wrong. Okay, those are the most likely problems. The rest of it, sheet underscore name, these are syntax. We can type them as is. All right? Everybody got it to work? Who has a problem? All right, so what is this data frame? The data frame is whatever the content is in your Excel sheet. It has columns, it has rows, and it has index. Let me show you what do I mean. What if we want to look at what is in this data 1? So we can use a command to display the first 5 rows in the data frame. What is the name of the data frame? Data 1. So I say data 1 dot head. When you do this command, it shows you the first 5 records. It shows you the first 5 records in the file. So now if I run it, I will get some data, but the data doesn't look good. If you look, it says course code, ICT, faculty, unnamed, NA, ID, فعليا, the data starts from here, where I say ID, test 1, project, test 2, presentation, and final exam. This is where my data starts, right? So we wanted to remove this. We want to remove this or skip these rows. So if you look at the Excel file that we have, you notice that you have 1 row empty, second row is maybe not related to what we're looking for. Third row is the same problem. So we have 3 rows that we want to skip. So how can we skip these rows in Pandas? So what does the command head shows you? Head shows you the first 5 records in the data frame. What I can do, I can copy the same command here, command copy, and then in the new cell that I have, command V, and now I can call it data 2, for example. You could still make it data 1, it's not important, but I want to call it data 2. But here, in this one, we want to skip those rows. So what I can do, I can say skip rows equal 3. Skip rows equal 3. This way, if we have any garbage data in the front, in the beginning, it will be skipped. No, when you say 3, it means first one, second one, third one will be skipped. The first 3 records, all right? So now if I run this, watch what happens. It's successful, but if I do, now if I say data 2, data frame 2, dot head, watch what happens. It will give me, the actual data. So it gave me the ID of the students, the score for test 1, the score for test 2, score for test 2 and project, presentation, final exam. So that's what the head command shows me. It shows me the first 5 records. What if we wanted to display the first 10 records? So you can say things like this. So I say display the first 10 record. What can I do with that? I can say data2 dot head, and between the bracket I will put the number of rows that I want to show, so that I can run. All right. So now we have from 0 to 9, but because I start from 0, I go up to 9. So the first 10 records. What are we looking at? What is this? This is the data frame I was telling you about. A data frame has columns. These are your columns. These are the names of your fields. It has rows. These are my rows, the values. But it has this thing here which is highlighted. It's bold, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is this? This is what we call it a key, an index to each row. Each row has a number, a unique identifier. And this one, the computer put it for us. It wasn't there before. If we don't specify an index, it will put it for us. So I have an index 0 to the number of 9. Is that clear? What if we want to display the last 10 rows or the last 5 rows? So we can use a command. So I can say display the last 5 rows. We use what? We use tail. So I can say data2 dot tail. That would display the last records, 5 records from 28 to 32. If I wanted to display 10 records instead of tail without value, I could put tail with example of 10, and that would display the 10 records. All right, so that is what we've done. Imported pandas, read an Excel file, we examined the data using a head command. The data doesn't look right. We skip those bad records using skip row command. We examined the data again, it looks better. And I can display more records if I want by putting the number between the brackets for the head command. And I can use similar command to look at the last record, which is tail command. All right. I'm gonna give you a pause here to make sure everybody got to work, and then we'll continue after. All right, so that first part shows us if we want to get part of the data frame, either the top or the bottom. What about if we want to get anything in the middle? Anything in the middle. What we do, we can type this. So display records or rows between 5 and 10. How do we do that? You can say data2 between column like that, between bracket, and then we put the range that we want to see. So if I want to say from 5 to 10, I put 5 to 11. This is like a range. So now if I run it, it will give me the records, the rows from 5 to 10. So either you can display the head, you can display the tail, or you can display part of the data using this command. You will put it in the name of the data frame and then the range of records that you want to see. So this shows you part of the data. What about if we wanted to display only the test 1 grade or test 2 grade or the presentation? You can say data2 and then the name of the column that you want to see. And the name of the columns are case sensitive. So if it is capital T, and so forth. Now, if we run this one, it will show me the grades only for test 1. If you want to do test 2, what do you put between the bracket test 2? Presentation, you will put presentation. All right. You can do a lot of things with these simple commands. For example, you can do this simple command you can do, for example, you specify the column name and then you can get statistical information about this column. So if you want to know what is the mean, what is the maximum, what is the minimum, what's the standard deviation, with a simple command you could do that. So for say display stats for test 1. Again, you put data 2, the name of the column that you want to display the statistics for. Then you can put test 1. Then we put the command to display the statistics, which is describe. That's the function that give you statistical information about that command. Now, if I run it about that column, you'll see that it'll tell you, the first thing it's telling you that how many rows you have in that column, what is the average or the mean of that column. So the grades are 16.39. What is the standard deviation? What's the minimum? What's the maximum? And your grade distributions. So to do this in a simple command called describe, you can get this information. Another way to do that, if you're not interested in all of it, you can do, for example, only the mean, only the max, only the min. So you say again, data 2, the name of the column, test 1, for example, and then you put that mean. This will give you what? The average. So that will give you the average. Okay. What if you want the min and the max? Same way. Or you can say data 2, find the max, find the maximum grade. How do we find the maximum grade? So again, data 2 in test 1. We're only looking at test 1 now. Dot max. And then run. So that will give you the maximum grade in test 1. So all of this, it shows you right now how we can look at the data, the part of the data at the beginning, part of the data at the bottom, data in the middle. We said we did this part. Data in the middle, 5 to 11. This will give you only section of your data. Then you have, if you want to only a particular column, you can put the name, the data frame name, and then the name of the column. Then you can do what? You can do things like this on a particular column or all columns. You can find statistical information using the command describe or the function describe, or you can look at individual values such as the mean, the maximum, and so forth. In this part, I'm going to show you how we do conditions. What if we want to look at only the students that scored above 15, or the student did not do well, all right, maybe scored less than 15. How do we do that? Okay, so we say data 2, that's the name of the data frame. It's a little bit of tricky. What do you put inside this? Here we put the condition. I'm just going to put it this way first and then I'll fix it. The conditions. What is the condition look like? The condition contains the column that we want to compare with the comparison and the value. So what is the column that we're trying to compare? Test 1. How do we reference the column test 1? Data 2, between bracket, quotation, test 1. That's how we reference column test 1. So inside of this, I have to put data 2, test 1. So that gives me the column that I want to compare. From here to here is my column. And then after that, I put my comparison. So if I want, give me everybody that scored less than 15, for example. Now, when we run this, it lists only everybody in that data frame that scored on test 1 less than 15. Now, if I run it, notice that it gives me all these students that scored less than 15 on that in test 1. What if we want to display the students that scored more than that? What do we have to do? What do? We just change this to what? Greater than, right? Type. How about we make the problem a little bit more complex? We say display all students that scored below average. How do we find out all the students that scored below average? Okay, so we'll make the problem a little bit more complex. Display all records, all students that scored below average. How do we do that? How do we do below average? First, do we know how to get the average? So I can say average equal to what? Data 2, test 1, dot mean. So this steps finds the mean and stores it in a variable called average. Once we got the average, we can use a condition like this to display the students that score below average. Now, I could have done this in one step, but just for explanation, I just put it into 2 steps. So I can say here what? Data 2 inside the condition. What is the condition? Data 2, test 1, less than AVG, the average that I calculated above. Test 1 here. Yeah. So now, if we run it, it should give me only the student that did below the average. So if I run it, you'll notice that give me, because the average was 16.39, notice that all the grades are less than the average. All right, so this one shows me the student that scored less than average in the first exam only. What if we want to find out all the students that did not score in the did not do well on the first exam and the second exam? Remember, we have test 2 and test 1. How can I select those students? So we can use a compound condition. So if I say find all students that scored below average, where? On test 1 and test 2. I'm going to repeat the same for test 1, so since we're already doing it. So I can do, remember average 1 equal what? Equal, we already calculated, but I'm repeating it again just for sake of repetition. So it says data 2, test 1, dot mean. That give me the first mean. I can do the same thing, average 2 equal data 2 dot test 2 dot mean. Now I have the mean or the average for 2 tests, test 1 and test 2. Now I can use them in my condition. So for example, I can say data 2, the condition goes in here in the brackets. What's my first condition? Data 2. You can put brackets if you want, just to separate them. Test 2 or data 2 dot test 1. What's the first condition? Less than AVG1. So that will give you the students that scored less than the average on test 1. And what?
Data 2.
Data 2, again, another condition. Data 2, test 2, less than AV2, average 2. So now this condition is a compound condition. Okay, you can use or you can use and. Just want to make sure something. Yeah. So now if we run it, your list, do you think it will be big or small? Small, because you're constricting your answer, your set. Both condition has to be true. That means I have to do less than average on the first test and less than average on the second test. So you should not get a big list, but we did, right? But if you notice that it only lists the students that did less than the average on both tests. Is that clear? So you can do and, or if you want to change the question a bit, it says instead of list all the students that either did not do well on the first test or did not do well on the second test, how would we change the problem? Instead of and, we use the or statement, which is this here, like that. This is the or. All right? So now if you run it, you'll notice your list will be bigger. Why? Because either this or this. So your and always constrict your answer. The or give you more options because it's either test. All right? Is that clear? Yeah. I'm going to stop for today. This one will give you an introduction to Pandas. I'll keep building on this to help you with the exam, with your exam. Okay.